Hi friends, welcome to English Study Point. Today in this video lecture, I am going to discuss another poetry by Andrew Marvell titled as The Garden, How Vainly Men Themselves Amaze. So the speaker reflects on the futility of human efforts to impress others or gain recognition, to win the palm, the oak or base. So here he mentions traditional symbols of victory and achievement, palm, trees, oaks, laurel, wreaths that men strive for and their unceasing labor see. So observes the continuous efforts of men, suggesting a relentless pursuit of goals crowned from some single herb or tree. So here he suggests that despite their hard work, men are rewarded for trivial accomplishments like a single plant whose short and narrow verge shade. So describes the limited comfort provided by these small rewards, hinting at their insignificance. Does prudently their toils upbraid. So the shade symbolizes wisdom, reminding men of the vanity in their pursuits, while all flowers and all trees do close. So nature's beauty is depicted collectively, signifying unity and peace among plants. To weave the garlands of repose. So flowers and trees come together to create decorations for rest, representing a serene, more natural reward than human accolades. Fair, quiet have I found thee here. So the speaker addresses quiet, personifying peace and tranquility as finding solace in nature. And innocence, thy sister dear. So here innocence is introduced as a companion of quiet, emphasizing purity and simplicity in this natural setting. Now here, mistaken long I sought you then. So the speaker admits to previously misplacing or misunderstanding where to find peace and innocence in busy companies of men, reflects on the misguided belief that social or societal interactions and busy lives could bring fulfillment. Your sacred plants, if here below, indicates that the virtues represented by quiet and innocence can only thrive in a natural environment. Only among the plants will grow. So reinforces the idea that these qualities are nurtured in solitude far from society. Society is all but rude. So here he critiques society, characterizing it as uncivilized and harsh compared to nature's gentle embrace. To this delicious solitude. So concludes by celebrating solitude, calling it delicious and suggesting that it offers true contentment and spiritual nourishment. No white nor red was ever seen so amorous as this lovely green. So the speaker compares the color green associated with nature to the colors of love, white and red. This establishes a connection between love and the natural world, suggesting that the beauty of green surpasses traditional romantic colors. Fond lovers, cruel as their flame, cut in these trees their mistress name. So the phrase fond lovers highlights the passionate yet sometimes destructive nature of love. The act of carving names into trees symbolizes the way love can leave physical marks on nature, echoing a kind of permanence that contrasts with love's transience. Little, alas, they know or heed how far these beauties hers exceed. So the speaker reflects on the ignorance of lovers who anthropomorphize nature. They know or heed without recognizing that nature's beauty surpasses that of human affection. This suggests a deeper appreciation for the aesthetic qualities of the natural world. Fair trees, where's your barks, I would no name shall but your own be found. So addressing the trees directly, the speaker declares that no other name or love should be inscribed on them, emphasizing loyalty to nature over fleeting romantic affections. This celebrates the trees in intrinsic beauty and permanence. When we have run our passion's heat, love hither makes his best retreat. So the imagery of passion's heat suggests the intense emotions associated with love, which eventually cool. So the idea that love withdraws indicates a transitory nature contrasting with the enduring presence of nature. The gods that mortal beauty chase, still in a tree did end their race. So the speaker invokes mythology, noting that even divine beings seek beauty in nature. The phrase suggests that this pursuit culminates in trees, symbolizing the intertwining of divine and natural beauty. Apollo hunted Daphne so only that she might laurel grow. So, referring to the myth of Apollo and Daphne, the transformation of Daphne into a laurel tree represents the ultimate merging of love and nature. This story underscores love's destructive path and the ongoing cycle of life. And Penn did after Syrinx speed, not as a nymph but for a reed. So, in this reference to Pan's pursuit of Syrinx, the transformation of Syrinx into reeds symbolizes the inevitable connection between love and nature. Pan's interest in reeds highlights the sadness and beauty inherent in such transformations, emphasizing the sorrow of lost love yielding to nature. So, what we see in this particular section is that here Marvels try to intertwine the experiences of love with the persistent beauty of nature, reflecting on how human affections, while intense and significant, may ultimately be overshadowed by the timeless charm of the natural world. So, the poem encourages a deeper appreciation for nature, treating it as a more reliable source of beauty than human passion. Now, from here onwards, we see what wondrous life in this I lead. So, the opening line sets an exuberant tone, suggesting a life filled with marvel and joy. The speaker expresses a sense of wonder and fulfillment in their existence. Ripe apples drop about my head. So, the imagery of ripe apples symbolizes abundance and natural delight. The act of them dropping implies a sense of ease and availability in this paradise. The luscious clusters of the vine. So, this line refers to grapevines, representing another facet of natural bounty. The word luscious evokes pleasure and richness, enhancing the sensory experience. Upon my mouth do crush their wine. So, the personification of the grapes suggests they are eager to be consumed, emphasizing indulgence. Wine here symbolizes enjoyment and celebratory aspects of life. The nectarine and curious peach. So, this line introduces more fruits, reflecting the diversity of nature's offerings. The word curious hints at the peach's delightful and enticing qualities. Into my hands themselves do reach. So, the fruits seem to willingly come to the speaker, signifying a harmonious relationship with nature, as if the natural world is responsive to the speaker's desires. Stumbling on melons as I pass. So, this line conveys a sense of playful interaction with nature. The act of stumbling suggests a carefree exploration where abundance surrounds the speaker, almost overwhelming them. Ensnared with flowers, I fall on grass. So the speaker becomes entangled with flowers, representing beauty and temptation. Falling on the grass implies the connection to the earth plus a feeling of surrender to nature's charm. Meanwhile, the mind from pleasure less. So this marks a shift in focus from the physical pleasures of nature to the inner life of the mind. It suggests that true happiness transcends sensory experiences, withdraws into its happiness. So the mind retreats into a state of contentment, highlighting introspection. The nature of happiness is depicted as being internal rather than solely derived from external pleasures. The mind, that ocean where each kind. So, comparing the mind to an ocean suggests depth and complexity. The reference to each kind signifies that thoughts and ideas of various forms are present. Does trait its own resemblance find? So, what we see here is this suggests that thoughts reflect or mirror one another, showcasing the interconnectedness of ideas and how individuals relate different concepts. Yet it creates transcending these. So, the poem highlights the mind's ability to go beyond mere reflection, indicating creativity and the power to generate novel ideas and worlds, far other worlds and other seas. So, this line means that the mind has the capacity to imagine and conceptualize realms beyond immediate reality and experience, and highlighting all that's made. So, the imaginative power is so strong that it can erase or transcend the material world, suggesting a desire to break free from physical constraints. To a green thought in a green shade. So the poem concludes with a metaphor of green thought which evokes freshness, growth, and renewal. The green shade symbolizes tranquility and protection in nature, emphasizing the cyclical and vibrant essence of life. Now, here we see here at the fountain sliding foot. So, the poem opens with a specific serene location near a fountain, suggesting calmness and tranquility. The sliding foot implies water flowing gently, creating a peaceful and harmonious environment, or at some fruit tree's mossy root. So, the imagery of a fruit tree emphasizes nature's bounty and beauty. The mossy root signifies age and stability, as well as the richness of life, inviting a sense of comfort and grounding. Casting the body's best aside. So, Marvel delves into themes of transcendence and liberation. The body's best represents material concerns, suggesting a shedding of physicality to embrace a spiritual or inner life. My soul into the boughs does glide. So, this line indicates the speaker's desire for connection with nature. The use of glide evokes gracefulness in the transition from a physical to a spiritual state, merging the self with the surrounding environment. They are like a bird that sits and sings. Comparing the soul to a bird signifies freedom and joy. Singing denotes expression and harmony, reflecting pure contentment found in nature, symbolizing a return to innocence. Then wets and combs its silver wings. So, the act of wetting and combing suggests preparation and care, highlighting the speaker's meticulous engagement with nature. Silver wings convey both beauty and the idea of aspiration, suggesting a readiness for spiritual flight until prepared for longer flight. So, the notion of prepared indicates a sense of growth and readiness for a journey. The longer flight symbolizes an exploration of deeper wisdom or enlightenment beyond the physical realm. Waves in its plumes, the various lights. So, the imagery of waving plumes suggests an interplay with light, epitomizing beauty and the complexity of existence. It implies that enlightenment brings forth a diversity of experiences and perspectives. Such was that happy garden state. So, the happy garden state refers to an idealized existence reminiscent of the Garden of Eden. It signifies a harmonious condition where both nature and the human soul are in perfect alignment, while men there walked without a mate. So, the absence of a companion reflects the solitude within paradise. This emphasizes the idea that while surrounding beauty is abundant, isolation is an inherent part of the human experience. After a place so pure and sweet. So, pure and sweet underscores the idyllic qualities of this paradise, suggesting that such a space brings forth purity of thought and emotion, which is integral to human life and spirit. What other help could yet be meet? This rhetorical question raises contemplation on the necessity of companionship. The speaker suggests that in such purity, neither emotional nor spiritual support from others is needed, but was beyond a mortal's share. So, the line indicates that experiencing this state of bliss is unattainable for humans. The use of mortal emphasizes the limitations of human existence, hinting at a longing for an eternal or divine state to wander solitary there. So, continuing the theme of solitude, the speaker reflects on the impossibility of enjoying such paradise alone. It raises a poignant question about the need for relationship and connection. Two paradises there were in one. So, the idea of two paradises suggests that having both a beautiful setting and companionship would create a complete, fulfilling experience. This line also highlights the duality of existence, to live in paradise alone. So, the closing line emphasizes the profound loneliness that can accompany beauty and serenity. It ultimately underscores the non fulfillment of isolation, suggesting that true happiness requires connection with others. Now, here at last, how well the skillful gardener drew. So, the poem opens with admiration for the gardener's talent. The term skillful suggests a deep understanding and mastery of the art of gardening, elevating the gardener's work. Of flowers and herbs, this dial knew. So, the speaker refers to a dial made of flowers and herbs, a metaphor for a sundial. It implies that nature itself serves as a way to measure time, integrating beauty with utility. Where from above the milder sun. So, the milder sun suggests a gentler and more nourishing light, indicating an idyllic setting where the sun plays a benevolent role in the garden's growth. Does through a fragrant zodiac run. So, the idea of a fragrant zodiac connects the garden to astrological symbols. Each flower or herb corresponds to a different astrological sign, emphasizing cycles and seasons, showing how nature parallels celestial movements. And as it works, the industrious bee. So, the industrious bee represents nature's industriousness. It underscores the interconnectedness of all life forms and their shared environment, highlighting the role of the bee in pollination and maintaining the garden. Computes its time as well as we. So the bee is anthropomorphized, suggesting that it also has a sense of time. This line invokes the idea that all creatures have their own perceptions of time, working within nature's rhythms. How could such sweet and wholesome hours? So this line introduces the theme of harmony and contentment found in nature. Sweet and wholesome emphasize the joy and nourishment that the natural world provides. Be reckoned but with herbs and flowers. So the poem concludes with a rhetorical question suggesting that time spent in nature is best measured by the beauty of flowers and herbs. It implies that true contentment and understanding come from engaging with the natural world rather than mundane metrics of time. Then with this video lecture ends here. Hope this video lecture will help you in your exams. Thank you.